Oh, what's happening over there? I guess it's my colleague Thomas. He's sending me an external event telling me that I have to start a presentation after some technical difficulties and some sweat. So we had to revert to a different PowerPoint. I have to start with some bad news. Unfortunately, our special guest, Michelle Obama, cannot make it today. She had a prior commitment in the speaking next door. So we'll do our best to provide a good session. We always have these monster-long titles that if you're nervous, they're not really easy to pronounce. But what we want to talk about today is leveraging change events in external systems to do processes in Salesforce. It's a new feature that we pilot in winter. We're super excited about it, and hopefully after this session, you will share this excitement with us. My name is Ralf Schundelmar. I'm a product manager, and I have with me Thomas Pollinger. He's a principal software engineer on my team.
So you're going to talk about me, or should I talk about myself?
You talk about yourself.
All right. So I was born in Switzerland. That's a little state probably most folks won't know about. It's called Wallace. And so I have a funny accent. Even Swiss folks think I have a funny accent, so I'm used to that. And so I came to the Bay Area as part of an internship and was in startups and various companies over the years and kind of adopted the Bay Area as my hometown, and particularly the Sierras and the skyline helped much toward that, and then the oceans and all that came as a plus. I have worked in various parts of business integration, business process choreography, IDEs, and also various UI frameworks. And I have joined Salesforce in 2012, and so far like it, and I've been there ever since. One of the events I like a lot in Salesforce is the yearly event where we have the multiple sclerosis Waves to Wine bike ride, and you'll see a little bit more about the wine's connection afterward.
Well, foreign accent number 2. I grew up in Germany in a small town called Lahr. And then in '95, I moved to Philly. And originally, I planned to stay for about a year. Fast forward 20-something years, I'm still here. Obviously, I like it very much. I learned English from Eddie Murphy. There was an HBO special at that time. Really helped me to tune my listening skills. Prior to Salesforce, I did multiple startups for about 10 years, and then in 2008, I joined Salesforce, so it's been a little over 9 years. I live in Berkeley. Jokingly, we call it the East Coast because all my friends in San Francisco don't come visit anymore. My favorite day at work is it's a soccer tournament, Goals Against Hunger. So for one day, you can pretend to be a professional soccer player, have a lot of fun, and actually do something good. And I actually already had 7 lives. I've been around, so I worked on many, many different products in Salesforce, Sales Cloud, Chatter, Service Cloud. Then I was the product manager for Salesforce Connect for 2.5 years, and about 3 months ago, I actually switched over to Einstein. You probably all know this slide, the most famous slide in the world, forward-looking statement. So please make your purchasing decisions on available features and functionality and not on some future outlooks that we might make today. So what are we talking about today? We thought it's best to give you a quick introduction to Salesforce, just that everybody is kind of level set what this feature is all about. And then we talk about, we named it We Want Triggers, because this was like, everybody asks us, when do you have triggers for external objects? So we kind of give a brief introduction here. And then we really want to dive in deep into what we call external data change tracking. At first, the architecture, and then Thomas will do a demo to show you how this works in action. We actually moved the roadmap up. Like I said, we had to go to the backup slides. And then hopefully there's some time for Q&A. So this is not me with more hair, but I quite often share this frustration when you do data integration or integration projects in general. It's not easy. Even with modern technology, it all comes down to the same challenges. So this was kind of the origin. how we thought about Salesforce Connect. Give peace, maybe remove the headache of data duplication, of copying data into Salesforce, because this is really the key message of Salesforce Connect. How can you leverage external data without copying the data into Salesforce? That doesn't mean that you don't have to copy any data into Salesforce. By no means it's a silver bullet, but it really is a great solution for a large variety of use cases where mission-critical data is in external systems and you do not want to copy it into Salesforce. So some key parameters here. You can basically connect with any API accessible application. The idea is to do it declaratively. So today we kind of break this promise because there's a lot of code involved as well. But that was really the premise originally. How can we use standards like OData to quickly integrate with external systems that the system admin can actually do the configuration to make it work? And if the external system is ready, it's really a question of minutes, not days or weeks. We started with read capabilities, and then over time we added write. At first write for external data systems, and then also write for Salesforce orgs. Because one key feature is also you can connect multiple Salesforce orgs using Salesforce Connect and share the data. Very often it's important that you can run reports, that you can marry external data with Salesforce data. So we allow you to run reports, create dashboards, and then also the Einstein analytics team allows you now to create trending reports and also use SOCL steps to bring external data into their dashboards. So what's the foundation for Salesforce Connect? We created a new object type called external objects. Really think of it as the cousin of the custom object. And it's basically the metadata representation of an external API stored in Salesforce. So we basically, let's say if you have an order in SAP, we bring it in as it looks like in SAP into Salesforce. So we pretty much also eliminate the data transformation step. The beauty is also it comes with all the power of the platform. There are some limitations, of course. Those limitations are really driven by the fact that we do not store the data in Salesforce. But you pretty much have the entire power of the platform. Just some examples. Search. You can search your external system from within Salesforce. So you can search for a sales order in SAP or a part in SAP or in a different external system. Mobile, you don't have to do any additional development to get external data on your mobile device if you use Salesforce, the Salesforce mobile application. And then, of course, the power of Visualforce, SOCL, SOSL, and so on and so forth. So it's a really, really powerful tool to integrate quickly with external systems. Now, I mentioned before, it's probably one of the most asked for features that it's not only customers but also partners. How can we detect changes in an external system and make those trigger processes in Salesforce? So technically, it's not really a trigger on the external system. But when we look at it, I mean, that's really the concept. You have an event. Let's say you have an ERP system that manages your warehouse. There's a customer order where you had to order materials for. The materials arrive or the products arrive. And now you want to send a notification from Salesforce to that customer to let them know, hey, we received your shipment. We are going to ship it to you in a short period of time. So how can we listen to this event and capture the event, bring it into Salesforce, and then in Salesforce trigger a process, and then potentially also write back. So that's really kind of the concept that we are talking about here today, listening to external events and have those events trigger processes within Salesforce. Now we want a quick run through of the roadmap before we get started with our deep dive. So in winter 18, the key feature that we delivered was really to get external data change tracking into a closed pilot. Also, one feature that many developers have been asking for is really support for batch Apex in the context of Salesforce Connect so that you can ingest large amounts of data into Salesforce for processing using batch Apex. We also have the pilot for Salesforce Connect event monitoring. So if you use event monitoring, you can now use the Salesforce Connect callout logs to analyze in event monitoring. And then we also published a small tool on the App Exchange. It's an external data source validation tool. It basically runs some queries against your data source to validate if the data source is configured properly. Now, what are we working on right now? What's coming in spring? We want to move the external data change tracking to an open pilot. In order to do that, there are a couple things that we need to add. First and foremost, we need a setup UI. We didn't get it into the winter release. You can make those settings with the API, but there's currently no UI. And then we will have Apex trigger on the change events. So that was a feature where we are relying on another team, and that's available then in spring. We also do some work on the debug log. It's also kind of listening to our customers. How can you easier debug and better understand what's going on with your callouts that you make? Kind of on the long term, of course, we want a GA, external data change tracking, custom HTTP header support. For example, if you use an integration user to define the authentication with the external data source, there's a lot of information missing that you might need, for example, to better filter or retrieve data. So this custom HTTP header support will allow you to send in additional parameters into the external system to filter. It could be as simple as the user that you actually want to retrieve the data for, or additional filters. You will also notice a lot of the setup is still in what we call classic. We used to call it Aloha. So this is also our mission to move all the setup pages into Lightning. And in the process of doing that, we also want to improve the metadata management. For those of you familiar, today you can do a validate and sync, but then if there are additional changes, it's not a very friendly process to keep the metadata in sync. So we want to improve that. The Apex mock data provider, it's also something that a lot of developers keep asking us for. You basically can simulate an external data source for your test automation, so you don't have to have a live external system. Last but not least, we are working on the Salesforce Connect Lite. This is really kind of a slimmed down version that is more for smaller or SMB customers to make the tool accessible to them. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Thomas.
Thank you very much. So with all that, we want to take a kind of a deeper look into what's under the hood. And with that, we're going to talk a bit. I tried with my limited UI skills to do a little animation. What you can see here is if you talk about external data change tracking, it's important to remember the external data source and how that fits into the overall architecture. So on the left-hand side, you have here the Salesforce org. This is where all your data processing happens. And then on the other side, you have the external system that represents the data that you want to connect to. And then what we also have is the browser and the standalone client that can react on changes as they happen in the system. So the first thing that typically the admin would do, they go into the setup for an external object, and they would enable external remote data change tracking. And as they enable that, what happens, we're issuing a SOQL query. In this release, this is going to be selecting all the fields that you have defined on the entity _x, and all these fields are going to be selected without any where clause restrictions. So there are enhancements in place where you might be interested in just a subset of the data. So then you could also issue a where clause to send that to the external system. So this is going to be translated by the OData4 connector to its OData equivalent. So it asks what everyone knows today with what the OData connector does. It asks and does an entity select on that particular external system. Now notice the additional change that we have added here, which is the prefer track changes HTTP header that instructs the external system to from now on track any changes that happen on that entity and keep track of them. So this includes creates, adds, updates, and deletes. And with that, the external system sends back a token which is the delta URL token, with which we can query the system at our convenience when we want to go get the changes. So what we're doing here is we are scheduling regular polls. So this is going to be scheduled for the next 30 minutes. This is configurable in an upcoming release, again, safe harbor. So on the current winter 2018, this is set to 30 minutes, but as on the upcoming spring 2018, you can set that to as low as 5 minutes. So for the purpose of the demo, I set that a little bit lower so you don't have to wait 5 minutes afterwards. This is also good this is a pilot feature. It's also good to get feedback, whether it is useful to decrease that interval. And so the initial stance that we took is to have a safe interval so that the external system is not going to be overflooded by DDoS-style attacks. So that can be fine-tuned as we're getting feedback from the pilot. After the 30 minutes, we're getting the data changes. And the external system can choose to provide these changes in a digest form, but they always have to keep the order in which things happen. So if there's an update, followed by a delete, followed by a create, that order should be kept. But if there's several updates, they may be coalesced into one update, as an example. So the external data may choose to provide that change as it sees fit. So we're asking the changes with the delta link URL, and then we get the changes. They're usually in form of JSON, again, creates, updates, and deletes. And they're being converted, I'm going to go a little bit more in detail, into our new format that is called the Change Data Capture Event. This is similar to a platform event, in fact, is a platform event, with a few special properties that I'm going to talk about shortly. This is going to be published. On the left-hand side, you see the Apex trigger. This is, again, that's a feature that's going to be available in spring 2018. I'm going to demo that today as well. What that allows you to do is react on changes within Salesforce and then automate business processing for things that happen, as Ralph has pointed out before, on your ERP system. So you can actually extend your functionality in a very loosely coupled way. So existing functionality that you've already built on Salesforce while interacting with this external system, you can easily bolt on additional change and business process automation without impacting your existing business logic, as an example of what the power of that brings to you. What we have for winter 2018 is the familiar streaming API. We are publishing these CDC events in a special BIO protocol. The schema for that being special, not the BIO protocol itself. And then either the browser, that's the demo that I'm going to show, pulls the data from that, or being pushed the data to through committee. And then as well, you can also have a standalone client if you need some other system that needs to interact with that. So what is at the heart of this particular event that I was talking about? So here is the familiar external object. That's products_X as an example representative of an external object. You have here two sections, the standard fields. Every single external object has these fields similar to custom object. So the familiar ID, we have in addition to that the external ID, and then also the created date and created by. And then you get the custom fields that are pretty much behave and feel the same as custom objects. So here in this case, we have a name, a unit price, and a stock of a product. And now this is the new entity that's called the associate entity change data capture that is identified. You can see that. So you're familiar with the _Cs, the _E for platform event, _X for the external objects, or _Z for big objects. So this is a new type, which is _change event. This is a special entity that mirrors the entity in the middle. Again, we have the standard platform event feature, so it is a platform event. It has the replay ID that identifies the sequence of this event as it has been received by Salesforce. Again, the created on and created by. And then we get the new standard set of fields that are captured by the change event header fields. These give you details about the nature of the operation. Was it a create, an update, or a delete? It gives you the entity name, and it also gives you the record IDs that are associated with the change. In this case, you'll have here an X03. X03 is the key prefix for the schema for an entity products_X. Mind you that for events, you also have to keep track. As the schema can evolve, the changes that happen in the past may not conform to the current products_X schema. So the change event header fields has also a version schema that comes along with it so that you know what change external object fields that you have to populate. In this particular example, they are mirroring what I have on the left. This is now an example of how a bio client looks like. In order to subscribe to that, this is very similar to how you're familiar with platform events. Instead of doing /event/ the channel that you want to subscribe, the topic that you want to subscribe, you're using here _data. So these are all the data points where data changes are being published. And in this case, we're using the entity name products_change event. So as soon as you subscribe to that, you'll see the JSON bio protocol style events that are being published to any listeners. In this case, the yellow highlighted background show you the change event header. Again, here, the user who committed that, so the 05 for the key prefix for that, a sequence number that identifies the sequence of this particular event, again, the entity name, change type, then the change origin, that is an important one if you want to troubleshoot things with your external system. This gives you the delta token that is specific to each external system, with which you know which particular change was pulled from the external system. And then you get transaction keys here just as a UUID, and then the timestamp, and then the record ID. So these are very important identifying fields for this particular event. And below that, we have the blue fields that represent the payload. This is an example of how you would subscribe. This is very similar to how you're, again, familiar with platform events. I'm using here a Dojo example, but there are many other implementations for Commit D out there. So you're doing Commit D subscribe, you get the channel, and you pass it function along. And here, just outlining how you can react on change types, operation changes for creates, updates, and deletes. Now the, again, forward-looking feature that is Apex Trigger, just to remind you a very familiar concept in Salesforce, a very powerful concept. This is one that acts on standard and custom events that you're very familiar with. I want to contrast how this is different over the Apex Trigger as you will be using it for change events. So again, you have here product_C representing a custom object for the product. And what you can do there are after and before inserts. So the before to validate and possibly change values before they're committed to the database. And the after are a read-only copy of your custom object that you can do additional business logic. You can basically update other records that may trigger other Apex triggers in your transaction. Important here is everything happens within the same transaction. So whatever things that you're doing within that trigger will happen as part of that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, the difference here to the data change capture. It's very innocuous, so it looks pretty much the same, but there are fundamental changes that happen between these two styles of triggers. This one here listens now on the _change event. So it's actually listening on those particular events. Only after insert is allowed. That's the same thing for platform events. Why after insert only? Because after is after the event has happened. Well, it has happened, it cannot be undone. And once the event happened, that event is immutable. You can't go change the event. What happened has happened. So all that you can do is you can react on that. The other important thing is it happens outside of the transaction that originally was cause of the events, particularly for external system. That makes sense. But as you will be seeing in another talk that is happening tomorrow, this also is valid for change events that are published as part of of Salesforce itself. So that is things that happen after event. Now, this opens the door for lots of possibilities. One of them is the number of batched events can now be much larger. Very interesting for external systems where you want to have a digest over half an hour. Well, you can get a much larger batch of events that can be processed at once. So this is a boon and has also some troubles with it because you have to remember that when you're doing batch processing within Salesforce, then you get the 200 or 100 batch size. So you'll have to take care of that when you're doing like internal record updates. But if you're using that style to do like IoT style processing where you have large a number of events that come in, then you can basically filter out events and then only the ones that are relevant may lead to actions within your business logic. Here again, a highlight of how you access these. They're all strongly typed, so you can access that within your Apex development console. So you say event, there's a little typo should say get change event header and then get change type, and then you can filter based on those. The important thing that I'm also, again, highlighting is that this is the associate event. It's not the entity itself. It's not the record that has changed. It is the event that gives information about the record that has changed. So also important to remember the change may have happened a half hour ago. So you may want to pull the current record in to get the current picture of that entity and compare what has happened between the two. Now, where can I enable that? So this is under the setup tree. If you look under external object, we have a new flag that's called enable external data change tracking. So if you enable that and save it, then external data tracking is enabled. Again, this is the UI features are only available for the spring release. For the winter release, we have metadata API, and if you get the pilot documentation, we document how you'd use the force.com CLI, which is a new way of doing metadata deployment, and you can easily toggle the particular flag with that as well. So with that, going back to my roots, so I chose as an example here, and again, that's Napa Valley too, as without any coincidence. So we have here a warehouse that acts as part of Cody Wine. So this is a fictitious company that acts as a wine distributor for boutique wineries that do not want to have the burden to deal with all the various laws and regulations to ship wine across different states and different countries. And in addition to that, the customer base may be very large, so if different styles of customers that like different wines. So that burden is being taken away from the boutique wineries and is the wine distributor's job. So you have here Andrew, who is a wine enthusiast and is really interested in the various boutique wineries, what new things are coming onto the market. And with this demo, I'm going to demonstrate where Cody essentially maintains the warehouse. So he has his product list of wines. He updates the stock and does various things like if the price have to change or any of these other things that are maintained within an external system. That's not the external ERP system that is represented here. And on the other side where we have the Salesforce Cloud, that's representing the portal with which customers are logging in and where the business logic runs to show deals and do all kinds of interesting things that are important to the customer. So with that, as usual, I'm gonna pray to the demo gods. Things still work as they should. We're having here, alrighty. So we are logging in as, so we have two personas here. We have Cody and we also have Andrew. So I'm logging in, I choose the same username for the purpose of this demo. So I'm logging in right now as Cody, who has, so we have here the two representations. So we have here the wine deals, and then we have here the warehouse. So I'm logging in as Andrew, who is the customer who wants to see what kind of deals are currently there. So what the customer can do, they can customize different profiles for notifications that they would like to receive. So in this case, they can say, I would like to get notifications over SMS or email. I can say whether I want to be notified on low inventory updates. So if the inventory drops down to a certain number, then I want to get notified because I might have to act quickly to place the order. I can also say that I want to automatically order based on a business rule a few bottles if the deal gets slow because I have to react quickly to get onto it. And then also whether I want to be notified whether my order actually went through. Because that's a competing system where when the inventory is low, my order might actually not be fully fulfilled. So I want to act quickly whether my order has been going through. So here is the portal. So that's an example of a custom web application built with the Lightning design system. This one implements now the Bayou protocol with which it subscribes to the channel that I talked about before and shows you all the changes. So currently, we have the updated deals that are on the current timeline. So the latest that we have here a deal for is La Tourangelle, and then you see the particular unit price and the total price of this particular item. So I'm gonna go and order, place the order. And while this is going on, so it still takes a little while, I'm going to show you, in the meantime, a few useful tools that you might appreciate. So one of them, and that's all in our documentation for the pilot. The scheduling is done with a feature that's called background operation, which is publicly visible. So if you want to know what is going on with your external change tracking, you can ask for all the fields that are there and look at, in this case, I want to sort it by created date, and I want to get the latest first. So this one allows you to inspect whether the system is actually still polling, and then you can get additional details about that. So here we have anything that is called waiting, means it's waiting on changes to happen. This is the marker for data changes. So this is the feature for the external data change tracking. And then you have here the submitted time, and then also when to process. So there you see whether the delay is registered correctly. And then you get also, here we have two listeners. One is for products. Products show you the inventory of the product. And then product order is orders that I'm placing. So it has two trackers that are listening. I don't have an example here now of an error that I had before that I could show. So if you have errors, they would show in this column here. And so you know exactly when the external system sends you an error back. In the current release, we basically stop listening. So we will have retries and other things in upcoming releases. But at least you can go see what errors happen there and then self-administer that. So we have here now the product that I ordered. I got 2 less in the stock, and the update is at 10:34, which should be about right. And I should have gotten a... not yet. I'll show you another thing to troubleshoot that part, which if you don't see any Apex triggers that are showing up, then you can, and at the same time I can show you the code for that too. Sometimes the Apex triggers, again, this is fresh off the oven, so things don't always work as expected. You can see here, I can show you another few tools. So we have here the triggers that I have defined. And in this case, we have 2 triggers. The first one is the trigger low on stock. And as you can see here, it's one that listens on the products underscore change event after it has been inserted into the system. So the save action essentially enables that if tracking has been enabled for this particular feature. And then we will do the same for this here. All right, and there we go. I should now see. All right, it's probably not easily seeable, so we have here now the SMS that was sent. So the message is that currently we have only 4 on stock, so we get the products low on stock. message. So with that, you get the SMS. And similarly, I'll actually show you another thing that might be valuable in this context. This particular example has been implemented with an Apex future. So if you want to know what's going on, you actually can easily look at the last processes that have been completed. So it helps you along the way to troubleshoot what is going on. The other example is what we have here. This is now Cody, so I'm representing Cody, even though I'm using here probably on the extreme of eating my own dog food. I'm also using the external system to actually manage my warehouse. But you can imagine that being simply some other system that is acting outside. So don't think that changes have to happen within Salesforce in order to get those events. So anything that acts on the external system will forward those events to your subscribers. So in this case, I am having the products. I'm looking at all my products, and so for instance, I have here a Grünweltiner, and I would like to give it a better deal. So I update that, and also we're actually kind of low on stock on this one, and then save that. And now, if I still have that open, so this is now. Again, Andrew, who is looking at its portal and browsing for updates, will get, hopefully, at some point, the changes. With that, I think we have concluded the demo. I leave that open, so trust me that it actually does. So it takes a little while to update. And then we can go over to, I think, the questions section. Or do we have
one more slide with the resources?
Oh, yes. And then in the end, we show the resources.
Okay. Yeah. Of course, we have a few minutes left for questions. If possible, please step to the microphone. If that's too far, then I will simply repeat the question. Any takers?
Yeah, my understanding is that current external objects do not expose themselves to Marketing Cloud through the Salesforce connector. Is that, and I'm
That's
wondering
correct,
if
yes.
this will fix that, where now you can use external object data in Marketing Cloud? Once these-
To my knowledge, there is no connector for Marketing Cloud right now from a Salesforce Connect point of view. I know that folks were working on making Marketing Cloud available for Salesforce Connect, but I don't know the current status of that.
Okay. I had a question. I don't remember the name for the object we saw where we can see all the log for what's been happening with all those external connections we're trying to track. And my question was, for how long are we having retention for that log, which is the time and the size that we can retain there, just to know and check which is the status for each one.
Do you know that? The log retention?
The log retention for?
That object you show us, I don't remember the name.
So that's actually customizable as well. So currently we have it in the winter release, it's going to be 1 day. But in the spring release, we may, so currently it's customizable through, basically you contact your account exec to increase that. But we're toiling with the idea to increase, to make it actually visible on the external data source configuration. But currently it's 1 day.
Okay.
But this is only for the background operations that happen as part of,
Yeah.
So not all the other background operations that we currently use, like for polling external data.
I also have another question related to those platform event objects we're leveraging on, because this is related to some data that is happening in an external system. Maybe once we processed the trigger that we're seeing, wouldn't it be handy to delete those records just for the sake of simplicity and having a cleaner database? Do you have some kind of feature related to this in mind or something? or do we need to create our own batch Apex processes to just delete them as far as they are already processed or whatever?
So if you want, so the question is whether you want to delay the processing of the changes?
Delete the
Oh,
change
Yeah,
objects.
delete.
Oh,
Once-
delete the change
yeah.
objects, yeah. So the change objects themselves, they're actually not as such persisted. So they're published internally, and as the subscribers get the change objects, they're kept similar to platform events, I think currently 24 hours, and they're being deleted automatically. This, I believe, will come in a future for platform events where you can customize the duration of the reclamation of events that are coming in. That could be up to 7 days, but currently it's a day. And if you're actually subscribing to it, you can subscribe to get events now as you subscribe, or also getting all the events that you missed out on the last 24 hours. So it actually behaves the same as
So-
the
so
G8
it's-
platform event
It's
feature.
just for 1 day, is it?
What's it?
One-
For
one
one day.
day.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have 3 more
Great, thank
people
you.
in line as
Sure.
we are running out of time. Thank you.
Quick question about the Apex triggers. Can you, besides the Apex trigger, can you use Process Builder to detect for certain events?
Process builder?
Yeah.
That is a very good question. So in this release, that's not yet there, but it's on the roadmap. So
It's
we're
on
actually
roadmap?
looking at
Yeah.
Okay.
So currently we filter out these particular events because they have special properties that need to be supported specifically.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
When the Salesforce system polls the external system, is that just an OData call or to find out if something changed?
Exactly, yeah. So it's following the OData 4.0 specification on
Okay.
how changes are being published to the...
Essentially the same system that's used to pull
Yes,
the data,
exactly,
it's used to,
exactly
and it's
the same
smart
system.
enough to know this is the field that I care about. Thanks, an
Exactly.
update.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, I just joined this session a little late. I don't know if you covered this. If the data is being changed in external system, not inside Salesforce, it's still that Salesforce will listen that event.
Yeah.
It will.
Yes.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's very important to know that. So even the demo might have kind of implied that changes only happen inside. No, any change that happened to the external system will be forwarded to,
Perfect. Thanks.
to the subscribers.
Can you swap back to the other view with the updated record set?
You want to see those?
Yeah, I want to see it.
Seeing is
Let's
believing.
see. Oh, there we go. At least the SMS went through. So let's see. Let me get that. Oh, why doesn't that show up? I have to do. There we go. And this didn't actually show up yet.
You probably need to refresh the page.
Usually you don't have to refresh, so
okay.
I want to point that out. So this may be, so the SMS actually went through. 10:39 is, yeah, the 2 events, yeah. 10:39 is when the event came through. So usually you don't have to refresh, so that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Cool.
sure.
Okay, last question, because we need to vacate.
Can we get the updates on real time instead of scheduling?
Say that again?
Real time?
Real time. So that's now the question that is. So right now the granularity is 30 minutes. It'll be configurable in spring to 5 minutes. And we want to get feedback from customers. So it won't be
Yeah.
real time like seconds, so most likely a minute. But the problem with that is it's a polling mechanism that is going out and gets changes back. So we're looking into another feature that's called callback that OData supports. But that's a lesser supported feature on the producer side. So we want to get feedback also from customers to know, is this a useful feature for us to have so that you can actually get the changes right away.
Okay, it won't be, it will be near feature you're saying, but it won't be.
Yeah. So
okay.
definitely go into the community group and sign up to the pilot. And what's the word I'm looking for? And give feedback also that we would like to get callback as well because our system supports it. And that's definitely helpful for us as well.
One more question. Is there any limitation on what type of external system, types of the external systems?
Anything that supports OData 4.0.
OData form. Okay, thank you.
Good.
Thank you so much, everybody.